This is me RJ here and I welcome you to my channel Mr. Teeth, where your dental concept get dissected. So this is our part 2 video of the impression material, and in this video we will be discussing with the impression compound. So I think many of us know this impression compound because a lot of time we have used this impression compound in our clinic, also in our lab. Okay, so this impression compound is one of the most important material, okay, that is used for taking impression. So in this today's video we will be discussing with the every aspects of this impression compound. So we will be discussing with the classification, application, and we will be discussing with the composition. And this is single tooth impression, that is particularly used with this impression compound. Similarly, we will be discussing with the advantage, disadvantage, manipulation, properties of this impression compound. Okay, so this is our part 2 video. So without delaying much, let's get started. So in the first point, as I have written here, okay, so impression compound, so it is one of the oldest dental impression material. Okay, so it is one of the most oldest dental impression material. Okay, and it is rigid, reversible, used in a edentulous patient. Okay, so it is used in a edentulous patient. So as I have told in my previous video, there I have mentioned that this impression compound is a rigid. Okay, so it is one of the rigid material, and it is reversible, means we can use it for many times. Okay, but alginate we can't use it for many times, and as it is rigid, so we can just use this in a edentulous patient but not in a dentulous patient. Okay, because there are presence of the undercuts in a dentulous patient. So after this, so here is a classification of this impression compound. Okay, so according to the ADA number 3, okay, so we have two types of impression compound, so type 1 and type 2. So type 1 is a impression compound itself, and type 2 is a tray compound. Okay, or also we can say type 1 is a low fusing. Okay, so I have mentioned a later. Okay, but for now just remember it is a low fusing. Okay, it is low fusing, it is low fusing material, and this is a high fusing material. Okay, so low fusing, high fusing means, okay, so this classification is based on the fusion temperature. Okay, so this impression compound have low fusion temperature, and this tray compound or type 2 compound have the high fusing temperature. So it is so on that basis it is classified. So type 1 impression compound, type 2 tray compound, and this tray compound is particularly being used for making the trays. Okay, so it is used to make tray upon which other impression substances is loaded to take impression. Okay, so this is easy to understand and also easy to remember. So just remember, in classification of the impression compound there are two types. Okay, so there is type 1 and there is type 2. So type 1 is an impression compound that is having a low fusing temperature, and type 2 is a tray compound that is having the high fusing temperature. So this classification is based on the low fusing temperature. Okay, so this is based on the fusion temperature. Okay, and the tray compound is used for making the tray, and impression compound is used for taking the impression. Okay, so it is easy. Now after that, in another point, as I have written here, so it is supplied as a seeds, cakes, or in the forms of the cones. Okay, so we can get it in the form of the cakes. Okay, so I will show you the pictures I have taken from the book. So in this picture, so as you can see in this picture, okay, so in this picture, as we can see here, so this is a cake form. Okay, so these are the cake form. So this is an impression compound and they are the cake form. So this is a cake form, this is also a cake form, and in this, okay, so we can see here it is a stick form. Okay, so here is also a sticks. Okay, so it is properly available in the two forms, seeds form, cake form, or the cones form, or the stick forms. Okay, and it is not important much, just you remember it is available in these cake, seeds, and cones form. Okay, after that, in the application section, okay, so which is most important, so in application, okay, so we use this impression compound for taking the preliminary impression or the primary impression, which is important to understand. So when we will discuss with the complete denture, okay, in a complete denture we will study there taking the primary impression and taking the secondary impression. Okay, so secondary or the final impression, so there you guys can understand well, but for now, okay, you just remember impression compound is used for taking the preliminary impression. Okay, so but I'll say just in short. Okay, so when we fabricate a complete denture, okay, so during the fabrication of the complete denture, we just take a impression. Okay, so the first impression of the patient is taken by this impression compound, and upon which the cast is fabricated. Okay, and after the fabrication of the preliminary cast, okay, so the cast that is fabricated from this impression compound is a preliminary cast. So that preliminary cast is again used for making the custom tray, and from that custom tray we again take the final impression. Okay, so the final impression we can take by the zinc oxide, usinal or other elastomeric impression material. Okay, so we will discuss that in a prosto, but for in dental material just you remember with those application which we and link those. Okay, so here as you are studying the impression compound, we are just studying with the application here, so just link this when you will study the preclinical prosto or the prosthodontics. Okay, so this is used for taking the preliminary impression. Okay, and after that individual teeth impression or single tooth impression. Okay, so I have included here. Okay, so I will explain here. Okay, after that special tray fabrication. Okay, so as I have told, okay, so custom tray special tray fabrication means this tray compound are used for making the trays. Okay, and upon which the impression material are loaded and taken the impression, so they are used for making the special tray fabrication. After that checking the undercuts. Okay, checking the undercuts and the border molding. Okay, so there are the application. So this border molding also is very important. Okay, so when you will study the prosto, you can study this border molding there properly, but for now I won't say this much because video will be long, but just think this impression compound is used for the border molding. Okay, preliminary impression, individual teeth impression. Okay, so I have picture. Okay, so I'll show you. Okay, so here as you can see. Okay, so this is the green stick compound. Okay, so this is a green stick compound is particularly being used for the border molding. Okay, you should remember that, and this green stick compound comes under this type 1 category. Okay, so this manipulation of stick, so we just flame it. Okay, so here is showing that the flame is flaming is done on this stick compound, and after that it is applied on the borders of the impression tray. Okay, so it is applied on the, so here you can see manipulation of stick compound for the border molding of the custom tray. Okay, so here the stick is being flamed, and after that it is being applied on the tray. Okay, so custom tray, and custom tray is that tray that is used for taking the final impression. So this is being applied on the borders of the custom tray, and after the application, okay, so it is formed like this. Okay, so just remember this picture and just think this is used also for the border molding, and particularly type 1 is used for the border molding. After that, okay, so in this point, okay, so as I have mentioned here, single tooth impression. So in this single tooth impression, it is also called the tube impression, and the compound is sustained and carried in a copper band. Okay, so there is a copper band. Okay, so this is a cylinder like structure. Okay, so this is a copper band, and in this copper band, okay, what we do is we just soften the material and fill the material in this copper band. After filling this copper band, okay, so it is pressed over the prepared tooth, and the compound flows into it and take the impression. So what happens? Okay, so it is particularly being used in a conservative dentistry. Okay, so in the conservative dentistry, after the preparation of the tooth, okay, so after the formation of the cavity, what they do is, okay, if you wanted to take the impression of that tooth, then what they do is that in the copper band, okay, so copper band they just fill. Okay, so it is cylinder like a structure, and they just fill the impression compound in this, and after filling this band, okay, so they just think this is a band. Okay, so this is really best example. So this is a copper band, I have just filled the impression compound in this band, and this is a tooth. Okay, so just this is a prepared tooth. So what we do is we just put this like this. Okay, so when this impression compound flows over this area, okay, it will take the impression of this prepared tooth. Okay, so same thing is written here. So it is pressed over the prepared tooth, and compound flows into it, and it takes the impression. Okay, so it is very easy to understand and just to remember. Okay, so single tooth impression is the important application of the impression compound. After that, in the composition section, which is also very important, okay, so many times they can ask in a Viva or in the theory exams, okay. So as I have written here, the composition, and I have also mentioned the mnemonics, okay. So the rosin, okay, so it is a rosin which is used in the 30 parts of this impression compound, okay. And copal resin, it is used as a, it is a included in its 30 parts, okay. After that, cornuaba wax, it is 10 parts, and stearic acid, it is a 5 parts. Talc, it is a filler, okay, and it is of 25 parts, and coloring agents are used in this, okay. So how to remember this is RCC STC, okay, you can remember like this way, or also you can remember this sentence, okay. So Rosie can come station to carry you, okay. So you can remember this, and you doesn't carry any of the ingredients but RCCSTC, okay. So this is a mnemonic. Rosie can come station to carry you. So Rosie means rosin, Rosie, rosin, can means copal rosin, come means carnauba wax, okay. So you can just interchange Rosie and Ca, can means carnauba wax, okay, and come means copal resin, Co come, and Ca can, okay. And station means stearic acid, St station, stearic acid, okay. So St means station. Talc means T, okay. So here just T, so T then 2, and coloring agent means CO, coloring agent, and here is Ca, carry, okay. So just remember like that. Copal resin means com, can means carnauba wax, and station means stearic acid, and stearic acid used for the plasticizer, okay. So I have written here, so I will discuss here, okay. So we have completed this, and after that, in this point, as I have mentioned here, plasticizer, okay. So plasticizers are those ingredients that are present in the impression compound that are used for increasing the plasticity and the workability, okay. So we can, after when we put this impression compound in the boiling water, okay, sorry, not in boiling water but in a hot water, then after that we just knead it, okay, and it is, and we feel that it is a sort of plastic material, okay. So that plasticity is brought by this plasticizers, and this plasticizer contain the select, stearic acid, and this gutta percha, okay. So these are the ingredients that are a plasticizer, okay, that are used in this impression compound, and it improves the plasticity and also the workability of that compound. After that, the filler, okay. So the filler, it is just a talc. This decreases the plasticity and increases the strength, okay. So it is just opposite of plasticizer. It just increases the plasticity and decreases the plasticity, and but it increases the strength. And other substances that are used as a filler are diatomaceous earth, soapstone, and the French chalk, okay. So these are the very important point, okay. So just remember, in plasticizer we can use a select base plate, and stearic acid, gutta percha. Also we can use is a beeswax, okay. Beeswax are also used sometime, but it is not important, but you can remember it. So beeswax, fillers means diatomaceous earth, soapstone, French chalk, or talc. And after that, after composition, we will study with the properties of the impression compound. And in the properties of the impression compound, okay, so we have first property, that is fusion temperature and the glass transition temperature, okay. So I will explain this very properly, and I think many of you have confusion in this fusion temperature and in the glass transition temperature. So just listen to me, okay. First I will decide this, okay. So in the fusion temperature, as I have written here, it is a 43.5 degree Celsius for the low fusing or type 1, and 55 to 60 degrees Celsius for the high fusing, okay. And fusion temperature, it is a impression compound softens enough to be molded for taking the impression, okay. Fusion temperature, okay, it is a temperature at which the impression compound it softens, and that is enough to molded, that is enough for being molded, okay, and taking the impression. Similarly, after that, glass transition temperature, that is called TG, and it is 39 degrees Celsius, which is 102.2 degree Fahrenheit, okay. And below this temperature, it is hard and brittle, and above it becomes the soft and the flexible, okay. So just listen, okay, just look this point too, okay. After the glass transition temperature but below the fusion temperature, slightly softening may occur but not enough for the molding. So this is very important point here, okay. I will explain now. So there is a two temperature. One is fusion temperature and another is a glass transition temperature, and the glass transition temperature is 39. Okay, so this is a 39 and this is 43.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so thus thing, when you are heating the impression compound and when it reaches the glass transition temperature, okay, so at the glass transition temperature it just becomes soft and the flexible. Okay, but it is not in that form that you can mold it or take the impression. Okay, so you are taking it or not. Okay, so what I am telling is that, so the glass transition temperature is that temperature, just it is that temperature in which temperature the impression compound it just became soft and the flexible, but not enough molding. Okay, but not enough molded for taking the impression. Okay, so at that stage it is soft and flexible, but it is not appropriate for taking the impression. Okay, that I have written here above glass transition temperature and below the fusion temperature. Okay, as there is gap, so this is 39 and here is 43.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so there is gap between this temperature. So in this temperature, okay, so there is softening and flexibility, but it is not enough for the molding, that you cannot take the impression at this phase also. Okay, for taking impression you should go up to fusion temperature. Okay, so you should move upward from this fusion temperature for taking the proper impression. Okay, so just take this concept. Okay, so just think, glass transition temperature comes first, then after fusion temperature, and in the glass transition temperature impression compound becomes soft and the flexible, and before it was the brittle, okay, and hard. Okay, and it was brittle and hard. Similarly, after the glass transition temperature and the, okay, after the glass transition temperature it becomes soft and flexible, and after soft and flexibility, okay, property, it just reaches the fusion temperature if you increase your temperature. And when it reaches the fusion temperature, okay, it just be in that phase, okay, that it can be molded easily. Okay, it can be molded properly and easily. So in after molding, okay, you can take the impression. Okay, so after this fusion temperature you can take impression properly. So that is a proper concept. Okay, many of us have confusion in this fusion temperature, glass transition temperature. Okay, so this fusion temperature is that temperature after which the impression compound is easily molded and you can take the proper impression. But after the glass transition temperature it is soft and flexible but not moldable, and you can't take the impression properly. Okay, so you should remember that. Okay, I think I have been successful to explain this properly to you. After this, as I have written here, during this there is a definite reduction in the plasticity of the material during the cooling. Okay, so this is of the fusion temperature. So in the fusion temperature, okay, in fusion temperature there is definite reduction in the plasticity. Okay, there is definite reduction in the plasticity, so it become more of plastic. Okay, definite reduction in the plasticity of this material during the cooling. Okay, so during the cooling, okay, so during the cooling there is definite reduction of the plasticity. So after that, in our second properties I have mentioned about the thermal properties. So in thermal properties we will discuss with the thermal conductivity and the coefficient of the thermal expansion. Okay, CTE. So thermal conductivity means, just think, okay, so any conductor that okay, so thermal conductivity means conducting the heat. Okay, so conducting the thermal energy. So this impression compound, it is a low thermal conductivity, it have low thermal conductivity. So during the softening of the materials, outside will be soft first and inside, okay, so inside the last. So kneading of the material ensures further uniform softening. Okay, so when you are softening the material, okay, so when you put that in the hot water, okay, so the outside layer, okay, so the layer that is outside, okay, so just think, okay, so this is a inner layer and this is a outer layer. So at this layer, okay, so in this layer, okay, and in this phase, okay, so in this layer you can see here it is a more of plastic here. Okay, it is soft there, but in this inside layer of this molded substance, okay, so it is not properly softened and it is hard itself. So kneading of the material is done. Okay, so kneading does the mixing of those inner substance and outer substance properly, so that there would be proper softening throughout the substance. Okay, so kneading is a very important material that ensures the further uniform softening. After that, okay, after cooling, okay, kneading means, just you think, okay, how, so this is the molded. Okay, so this is just think this is a sphere of the impression compound, and I will do this. Okay, so I will take the substances from the periphery and I will push to the center. Okay, so that the periphery substances would move to the center and the center substances would be pushed towards the periphery. Okay, so it works in this pattern. So you just take like this way and you just force the substances in the center. Okay, you just take and just force, take and the force. Okay, so that is a proper way of kneading. Okay, and that causes the mixing of those inner substance and outer substance, and after that affecting the cooling rate. Layer adjacent to the oral tissue cools faster than inside. Okay, so this is also important. So thermal conductivity, we have low thermal conductivity, and during the softening of the material, the outside material remains soft itself, but inside it is hard, so we should do the proper kneading. And in the second point, okay, which is the significance of this thermal conductivity. So when we take the impression, so the substance, okay, that is just adjacent to the oral tissue would cool faster, but the substance that is far from the this oral tissue, okay, so they would take a lot more time to be cool. So removal of the impression at this stage would cause the distortion. Okay, so that is the significance, okay, of this thermal conductivity. And after that, in the next point, as I have written here about the coefficient of the thermal expansion or the CT, so it is high. Okay, so coefficient of the thermal expansion is high in this impression compound. And after that, linear contraction. Okay, so 0.3% from the mouth temperature to the room temperature. Okay, so when you take the impression and you just take that impression from the oral cavity and put in the kidney tray or anywhere, okay, if properly in a kidney tray, then there is of linear contraction, okay, of 0.3%, and which is very important to remember. It is the linear contraction. So coefficient of thermal expansion, so there is a linear contraction of 0.3%. okay. After that, a reduction of the thermal distortion. Okay, so there are 2 points about the reflaming and the cold water spray. So there are two. So just you remember, just you don't go in detail about this, just you think there is a high coefficient of thermal expansion and linear contraction of 0.3% take place. So for reducing this thermal distortion, you just do reflaming and cold water spray, and in reflaming you just reflame it and take the second impression, and in cold water spray you just put the cold water spray on the beneath portion, okay, on the metal tray. Okay, so that the surface that is adjacent to the tray would be hard and the surface layer is still soft. Okay, after that, the disadvantage of this reflaming and the cold water spray. Okay, so stress may be introduced, so it is important to pour cast within the 1 hour. Okay, so during this reflaming and cold water spray, as I have discussed previously, so those things would cause the generation of the stress. Okay, generation of stress is caused inside the material, and that would cause the that would cause 1 hour. Okay, that would cause the increase in stress inside it, so it would distort the material. Okay, so you should pour the cast within 1 hour. Okay, within 1 hour of taking impression, you just pour the cast so that proper cast is manufactured. Okay, so proper cast is fabricated. So we have completed these thermal properties, and in our third property is the flow. Okay, so the flow means in impression compound, as you know that it is a quite of a rigid impression material, so that it is of low flow and less surface detail is reproduced by this impression compound. So in this dimensional stability, okay, so the previously I have written more, so I have corrected this. So in dimensional stability, it is having the low dimensional stable. So as I have discussed previously, as there is the development of the stresses, okay, there is a linear contraction, so that there would be this increase or decrease in this dimensional. Okay, so it is a low dimensional stable. After that, for preventing the distortion, it is good to pour the cast immediately due to the release of the strain. Okay, so which is important. So it having the low dimensional stability. Okay, so we have completed with the properties of the impression compound, and after that, in the manipulation section, okay, and it is very easy to understand. I will first recite this and I will tell you. And so in the first point, as I have written here, small amount of the compound, okay, small amount of the compound can be, okay, so that is of stick compound. Okay, so stick compound, you that I have shown previously. So in this picture, okay, as you can see here, so here just the stick compound is just flamed and it is manipulated in such a way. Okay, so small amount of the compound, that is stick compound. Okay, so it is just flamed by the it is just softened by using a little flame, and direct flame would cause the plasticizer to be volatilized. Okay, so this is important here. And after that, larger amount of the compound like cakes softened in the warm water, that is on the 65 to 75 degrees Celsius, and after that proper kneading is done with the fingers in order to obtain the uniform plasticity throughout the mass. And in a slightly oversized tray, it is loaded and seated on the tissue to be recorded. So just think, I will say you. So we have two types of the compound. One is a stick compound, another is a cake type compound. Okay, larger amount of the compound is present in this cake type compound. So what we do is, the small amount of the compound in stick compound we just, okay, so this is a flame, we just flame it and use it on the border areas, okay, for the border molding. So that is one way. And in this also, as I have written here, direct flame. Okay, so when you use the direct flame, okay, and you use the flame for the larger time, okay, so the plasticity of the material would decrease and it would be volatilized. Okay, because it is a quite a volatile substance are present there, so it would be volatile. Okay, so just remember like that. Okay, and after that, in the next point, the larger amount of the compound is present, okay, that is in the form of the cakes and softened in the warm water. So we do, so for this larger amount of the compound, what we do is, just think, this is a cake. Okay, so we just break it in the pieces. Okay, so breaking into the pieces will make easy to manipulate it. Okay, so break it into the pieces, and after breaking it into the pieces, okay, we just put in the warm water. First of all, we just take the warm water in the rubber bowl, and after placing the warm water in the rubber bowl, we can use the any kind of the cloth, okay, especially the muslin cloth. Okay, so or muslin cloth or the gauze piece, okay, you can use that, and just put it in this way. Just think, this is a rubber ball, and you can put this gauze piece or the muslin cloth in this way, and you just put the impression material over it. Okay, so, and water is present throughout this bowl. Okay, so water would come in contact with this impression material. So the using of this muslin cloth is that, okay, so impression compound as it is sticky, so it can stick to the rubber ball. So for preventing the stickiness, for preventing the sticky of this impression compound to the ball, okay, we use the water, we use the muslin cloth. Okay, so this muslin cloth prevent us from the sticking of the impression compound. So first we just break, first we have break the cake of the impression compound, we have put that into the this rubber ball, and we just wait for its increasing plasticity. Okay, so with the temperature there is increase in a plasticity of this material, so it becomes moldable. Okay, after the fusion temperature, so after the fusion temperature, as it is moldable, we just take it and we again just knead it. Okay, so we take the substances from the periphery and we just push it into the center. Okay, so the surface substances would come to the center and the center substance would come to the periphery, so there would be proper uniform, okay, uniform plasticity would be present all over the substance. Okay, and that will make easy to take impression. Okay, impression of any of the oral tissue. Okay, so after loading to the tray, okay, so you just push the material towards the periphery, so that the periphery so that those periphery substances would take the impression of the peripheral areas properly. Okay, and after that you just once reflame it. Okay, you just flame it and just pour into the cold water and take the impression. Okay, and if the impression is not good, okay, if the impression that you have taken it is not good, then again you can just correct it. Okay, again you can just mold it. Okay, and again you can put onto the metal tray, and again you just dip into the cold water and take the impression. So that is a proper way of taking this impression by this impression compound. After that, okay, so the precaution, so in the precaution, prolonged immersion of the impression compound in a water bath cause the compound to become brittle and the grainy. Okay, and similarly overheating would cause the compound becoming sticky, and avoid incorporating water during the kneading. Okay, so during kneading, okay, so the water would be coming inside the impression compound. Okay, so that should be avoided. And after that, in disinfection we can use the 2% alkaline glutaraldehyde. Similarly, pouring of the cast and cast separation with the, okay, so as I have written here and here. Okay, so the cast is poured immediately after the taking impression, so we just immediately pour the cast, and after the pouring the cast, it is separated after some time, by immersing into the warm water. Okay, so that is the proper way. And excess hot water would cause the increase in the sticky of the compound. So as I have written here, so we have now advantage and disadvantage of the impression compound. So in the advantage section, so it is reusable, okay, and it is correctable. Okay, as I have previously told, it is correctable if the impression that you have taken is not good, okay, or it have some mistakes on any part of the impression, then you can correct it. Okay, you can take the impression again, and after that it is dimensionally low dimensionally stable. Okay, so sorry, I have mentioned it here. Okay, so it's not here. Okay, so correctable as it is cohesive and accurate. Accuracy can be improved by flaming the substance. Okay, so as I have told in the manipulation section, so reflaming you can do. Okay, and after flaming just put into the cold water and take the impression, so that will increase your efficacy and accuracy. Okay, similarly in the disadvantage section, as I have mentioned here, okay, so the less details are recorded and distortion. Okay, so due to this temperature and stress thermal contraction, they would cause the distortion. Similarly difficult to take the impression in the undercut area, so we take in the edentulous patient, and possibility of the overextension especially in the peripheries. Okay, so this is important. Okay, so this advantage and disadvantage you can make by yourself too. Okay, when you will take the proper concept of this chapter, so at that time you can make the advantage and disadvantage by yourself. Okay, so you can add more things in this advantage, like that it is reusable, correctable. Okay, so it is non-toxic, it is biocompatible. Similarly you can use the impression compound for many other purposes. Okay, as it have a proper strength. Okay, so there is a less chance of being distorted easily. Okay, as it is having the more strength, so it is properly being loaded on the metal tray and it is stable. Okay, for the longer time after you take the impression, so it is stable. But in other cases like zinc oxide usinol or in the alginate, okay, so it just they are not they do not have the proper strength in themselves. Okay, so they would be distort after you take the impression, and just little force can destroy that. Okay, so that is also one of the advantage. So you can make by yourself the advantages and the disadvantages of the substances. So I will not enforce much in this advantage and disadvantage, and I think you have been clear with every aspects of this impression compound, and I hope uh, i have I have tried well to explain all those points to you. Okay, and after studying all those, okay, so you will be prepared for your university level examination. If you love this video, please do like, subscribe and share with your batchmate, and I will meet you in the next video. Okay, so in the part 3 video of the impression material. Till then, stay happy, stay healthy, and tata, bye bye, thank you.